Welcome to R&R Livin' Life. What a way to begin an episode as the sun rises over the Gulf of Carpentaria as we eat breakfast and do the final pack-up of the troopy before moving out. In this episode we begin our return journey to Cairns. We have 4 days before we need to return the troopy, and with just over 1,000 kilometres to travel before then without any side trips. Our first leg today is about 270 kilometres as we make our way back towards Bramwell Junction and on towards Batavia Downs, where we turn off to go across to the PDR that will take us to Weipa. On leaving Punsand Bay, Rick and I made our way back past the Croc tent and on to Bamaga. From there we headed towards Ingenue, along the very corrugated Ingenue Road, capturing only 2 worthwhile photographs of the road, as it was too corrugated to capture others, to join the Ingenue back road that becomes the old Telegraph Road before turning into the Peninsula Development Road, Bamaga Road again. The road then finally turned into the Northern Bypass Road as we came to the Jardine crossing. Are you confused? Well, I was, with all the name changes for the same road, depending on the map I was following. Talk about which road did you follow. Thanks to Rick's good navigational skills, not that he really needed any to follow the one road, we arrived at the Jardine crossing just before 8 and were lucky enough to be the first to cross. No waiting. We literally drove up and drove straight onto the ferry. This historic vehicular ferry, which connects the eastern and western sections of Cape York Peninsula, has had very mixed reviews, with long wait times and disrupted service, but we had no issues at all. While crossing, we did keep an eye out for crocodiles and other wildlife, but sadly we didn't see anything. We were now 180 kilometres to Bramwell Junction. From here the road was pretty good, without any major corrugations. Both Rick and I were surprised by the amount of bitumen, but then again efforts are being made to have the whole stretch bitumen. What a disappointment for those adventure-seeking drivers. Continually trying to keep to the gravel road in good order would be an endless job up here, especially after the wet season or in the event of isolated heavy rains. The changes in vegetation along the road is always interesting, often making me ponder just how some trees can grow in areas that don't look like they can sustain them. For example, palm and cyclads in amongst eucalypts. I reasoned then that some areas might be more rainforest than others, depending on the topography, but then again I could be wrong. Like the road, some areas are more prone to bulldust or corrugations, while other parts seem to be quite compacted and smooth. We passed a sign unreadable, not from the dust, but from stickers. When I see signs covered in stickers, I am disappointed in humanity. The majority of people come to enjoy this pristine wilderness, so why then do some feel the need to stick their stickers over signs is beyond me. It's a bit like rubbish, tissues, paper, and especially beer or drink cans left beside walking tracks. I certainly don't come for that, or to know who came here as well. Pick up, clean up after yourselves, and leave the area like you haven't been there. From the Jardine crossing we were now heading in a southerly direction, following the Northern Bypass Road or Bamaga Road, depending on which map I was following. Around Fruitbat Falls the road then turns back to the telegraph track. Rick did not find the driving very arduous, as we had expected rough sections, corrugated dirt, washouts and creek crossings. I suppose it depends on what you are used to. We were making such headway that we sailed past the turn-in to Fruitbat Falls, where we had planned to stop on the return journey, but there is no signage coming from the Jardine River. So completely missed it, and only realised we had passed it about 10 kilometres up the road. The first thing now on our bucket list to return to at a later date. At one point out my window I could see ranges peeking out on the horizon, and could only assume that we were travelling along the top of a plateau. For the majority of time, the trees along the road blocked out what lay further afield. We wove our way between trees that hugged the road, with ever-changing vegetation and road conditions. In places the trees were covered in dust, while on other stretches they looked quite fresh and clean. In places the table drains were quite soft and sandy looking. Then we would come to places where it had been badly washed out. Corrugations around corners seemed to be the norm, corners taken at speed. We passed the turn-off to the ranger station, where the Heathlands Resource Reserve joins part of the larger Jardine River National Park, with a combined area of 384,000 hectares. We were now travelling along the Jardine River Plateau, surrounded by flat to undulating terrain and low hills that separates the northern tip of the Cape from the lower peninsula, with dense tropical heaths and open eucalypt forests. The change in vegetation was quite noticeable, especially as the sun decided to appear from behind the clouds. Here the low heathlands were not all that high, but still blocked the view across the countryside. We came across termite mounds in places throughout the savannah, though I am pretty sure they were not magnetic mounds, as they had too many different sides to them. The mounds were constructed with a mixture of soil, termite saliva and dung, and each one is filled with an abundance of galleries, and they fascinate me with their numerous shapes and sizes. These masterworks of construction act as natural air-conditioned compost bins. Rather than destroying timber, they recycle native savanna grasses and leaves, providing crucial nutrients back into the local soil. We encountered long straight sections that went as far as the eye could see. The countryside was always changing. Just after 10 we passed Bramble Junction, not stopping in this time as it was too early to have a hamburger, even for morning tea. They were delicious. However, for morning tea, just a tad too big. Since leaving the Jardine crossing, we had found the majority of the road in good condition, with some corrugations, but on the whole it was smooth sailing. Bramble Junction Roadhouse, just 30 kilometres from Moreton Telegraph Station, is right at the junction of the Bamaga Road and the start of the famous Overland Telegraph Line. We passed Bramble Tourist Park, closed for the season, while not far from the turn-off to it was the Bulldust Stretch. Certainly not a place I would like to have to cross in the wet. The road had been so badly cut up, with deep wheel tracks, fine powdery soil, and multiple tracks to choose the best line. Sometimes it was a case of driving on the wrong side of the road, and we were thankful there was no oncoming traffic. The dust gets into everything, as it is that fine and powdery, and in the Troopy there were multiple places where it could get in. We could see burning off happening in paddocks adjacent to the road, thankfully not blanketing it, leaving visibility good. As we topped one rise we could see smoke in the distance. As there was very little wind, it tended to just hang, especially in the lower sections of the country. Though the road looked straight, we were forever crossing small gullies, some with concrete bottoms, while others just gravel. Further along we passed Steve Irwin Wildlife Reserve and Nature Refuge. At over 135,000 hectares, a conservation property dedicated as a living memorial to Steve Irwin, protecting a pristine network of wetlands, savannas and rainforests that are vital to dozens of rare and vulnerable species. The reserve's pristine waterways, especially the Wenlock River, act as a primary sanctuary for apex predators like crocodiles and diverse wetland flora. Are we there yet? Moreton Telegraph Station, with its spacious and shady 6 hectares of clearing and natural bushland, was the next point of interest on our journey. However, we did not stop. As a side note, the station is closed for the 2026 season due to flood damage. Being so close to the Wenlock River, I am not surprised. We were now around 290 kilometres from the tip of Cape York. About 70 kilometres from Moreton Telegraph Station was the turn-off to Batavia Downs, a former cattle station and research farm located on the Wenlock River. The unsealed gravel track heads directly west towards Weipa, cutting across the station to connect with the PDR near York Station. We had read that sections of the route were highly corrugated, but I think the road had recently been graded, as we found it smooth sailing in places and in relatively good condition. We crossed numerous watercourses, rivers, ranges, and a jump up that gave us a stunning view of the country before us. The Wenlock River corridor provides an important connection between the eastern and western Cape York Peninsula. Significant and relatively undisturbed habitats occur within Batavia National Park, including various vine forest patches, the Emberley Range with its elevated swamps, and important riparian corridors along the Wenlock River, headwaters of the Olive River and other creeks throughout the park. It was a remarkable section of our travels. Having lived in the Gulf country many years ago, it was great to see this area that we had heard so much about. In some ways vastly different to the lower Gulf, but in others so very similar. It was quite interesting to see the changing vegetation between the range country and the lower flood-out country with its mix of vegetation. Like all gravel roads, there was quite a bit of dust covering trees and shrubs along the road, more so in the softer country rather than the harder, hillier sections, which also defined the types of vegetation. As we reached the Peninsula Development Road, we passed through an old disused grid, emerging onto a section of bitumen that took us past York Station Homestead, before turning back to a very wide gravel road that had at least 4 tracks. It was now time to choose your own path by reading the corrugations, bulldust patches and washouts, not to mention keeping a lookout for oncoming traffic. I think this section of our travels turned out to be the roughest section we had encountered. It was certainly up there with the section just after we crossed the Jardine River, but this was much, much longer. We were quite surprised at how much bitumen is on the Peninsula Development Road. The sections in the south are much longer, but it goes between bitumen and gravel all the way into Weipa. The closer to Weipa, the road became a pick-your-own track across a very wide road, with multiple tracks including the road, the table drain, and even out wider in places, with some extremely corrugated sections, while other sections were wide bulldust stretches. Rough surface signs really meant rough surface, and often there was no way around but to make the best of the road. We crossed Mile Creek, a vital, frequently flooded causeway on the road to Weipa, often closed during the wet season, located near the Mission River. Mission River is a vast estuarine river system on the western side of Cape York Peninsula, flowing 37 kilometres into Albatross Bay in the Gulf of Carpentaria, just north of Weipa. The river catchment covers roughly 2,690 square kilometres of tropical savanna and estuarine wetlands. We were beginning to see a change in the colour of the soil. In places, tall straight trees lined the roadway, while clumps of palms appeared in amongst the shrubs. We passed quite a few rough surface signs again, not that one really needed to be reminded that the road was rough, but where there was a sign it was particularly rough. The tropical savanna scrublands, largely a pristine wilderness, supports an immense biodiversity, from iconic eucalypts and Darwin stringy bark open woodlands and monsoonal grasslands. There is a massive array of unique wildlife, spectacular river systems and important bauxite mining operations within the area. Dust covered most of those close to the road, and we could barely see further through the line of dusty trees along the table drains. As we got closer to Weipa, the vegetation receded and the country opened up, and I became intrigued by the long piles of rich red dirt pushed up alongside the road, and can only assume that mining had occurred in the area and it was now being made ready for revegetation. Not far out of Weipa we passed our first haul road, then the airstrip and a huge termite mound built beside a water junction. We caught a glimpse of the loading facility as we made our way into the town centre. What surprised me most about the port area was the crystal clear blue water, more like an aqua colour than the deeper blues we had been seeing. On the outskirts of Weipa I was pleased to see a bank of tyres used as a wall, a great reuse of old tyres. I was looking forward to seeing what Weipa had to offer. Way back in my younger years I did a project on the mining here in Weipa, and in those days you could write and ask for information regarding the industry. I was amazed by the samples they sent me. Weipa is just over 800 kilometres from Cairns and is situated on the northwestern coast of Cape York Peninsula, facing the Gulf of Carpentaria, located on the estuaries of the Hay, Amberley and Mission Rivers on Albatross Bay. From the town centre we made our way to Albatross Bay Resort, where we made camp just behind the shore of the bay. What an amazing place to park up and spend the next couple of days. As one of the few places on the east coast of Australia where the sun sets over the ocean, the western-facing shores offer breathtaking sunset views, something that I was looking forward to. The first thing I did before setting up the troopy was to go and check out the bay, as we had read that it sometimes was frequented by dolphins, saltwater crocodiles, and an array of birdlife. The bay was staggering. Sadly, but excitedly, I only saw a jabiru. Once we had set up our chairs, Rick and I sat and enjoyed the peace and quiet of the afternoon, relaxing after our day's journey, as well as watching the fires out on the horizon as the jabiroos stalked the shallows in front of our camp. What a way to end the day! As the sun sank lower onto the horizon, Rick and I sat and watched the changing colours as the sun sank below the horizon, where we will leave you for this episode. Join us next time as we drive the longest single-lane bridge in Australia, visit Mapoon, and check out Cullen Point and the vast expanse of the Gulf of Carpentaria. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Stay safe. Enjoy your travels. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, Live and Life.